I don't know. I've always had this idea in my head that 10 sites doing $1 million a year, right? So $10 million a year in revenue. That was kind of like an exciting revenue goal, or, I'm less money motivated now. I'm more like people motivated, right? So how many more people can we reach, And so, if we could get 10 sites that are doing, 1 million visitors a month, that'd be fantastic.
So today I'm joined by Deacon Hayes, and Deacon's a financial planner who became an author, and along the way on this journey he launched a website called wellkeptwallet.com. He's amassed a huge following on this mission to transform people's lives through personal finance education. So keep listening to today's podcast to learn about how to leverage your personal, your professional expertise to build revenue generating content and community. Hey Deacon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Ben, thanks for having me.
So let's go back to the beginning where this all started in terms of the website. You launched wellkeptwallet.com. You were a financial advisor, but what was the moment where you thought, hey, this could be a website. This could be more than just me giving individuals financial advice. This could be something. What was that trigger moment for you?
Yeah, well, it was really my wife and I getting married and realizing we had this debt. We had $52,000 in consumer debt, and realized, hey, we have a negative net worth, and we're just starting out our life. And so, Well Kept Wallet was a way to kind of share how we paid off our debt, and realize like, oh wow, we can actually reach people with this message of how to save money, how to make money, how to pay off debt. But so really, it was just getting married and kind of putting all of our finances on paper and saying, hey, we got to do something about this debt, and we got to do something fast.
And so you launched the site Well Kept Wallet. Was the idea when you launched the site that it would be a revenue generating stream for you, or was that it just happened that you realized, hey, we're making money from this?
No, actually, it was literally, I didn't even know what a blog was. I just decided, hey, I'm going to create this website. I've always wanted to create a website. I've dabbled in other stuff, but never had any success with it. And so it was something that I was just interested in. And so I really had no plan to make money with it. But then realized that, wow, this could actually be something. And
so you were creating content, you were publishing content on the site. You then began to make some money through it. What was the revenue streams for you?
Well, so it was interesting. So back in the day, I had a buddy reach out to me, and he worked for like a marketing company. And he said, hey, I've got a client from USAA, the insurance company, that would love to advertise on your site, like $150 for 3 months or something like that. And I'm like, really? Like, I don't have any visitors, right? I'm like, maybe I have 10 people on the site. So I was like, oh, $150, all I got to do is put something in my sidebar for this person. And so I realized, I could actually make money from it. And then I found Adsense, which was Google's way of putting ads on your website very easily as a small publisher. But I was making just pennies a day, maybe like a couple bucks a month or something, But what was interesting though, what actually kind of hit it out of the park that made me realize, hey, there's something here, was I was able to get a local news segment where they came out to our condo and they said, hey, we want to, film you talking about paying off your debt and that kind of thing. And so the camera guy was like, hey, can I film your budget? That I created. I called it a financial game plan. And I'm like, sure, why not? So he just goes over to my computer and he films it. And they put on the segment that, hey, if you want to download Deacon's form, go to wellkeptwallet.com. Well, what I didn't realize was it was a Fox 10 segment. It's syndicated around the United States. So it was actually like in Fox in California and Fox in New York. And so all of a sudden I had all these people coming to my website to download my free financial game plan form. And I made like $3,000 in a matter of just a few days. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. How is this possible? Because up to that point, I made $150 from selling an ad, and I made like pennies from Adsense, right? So that just blew my mind of like, wow, there's some potential here.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's an interesting progression. Yeah. From, hundreds of visitors to thousands. Was that just a one-off spike that you were able to enjoy and then just kept plodding on? Or was that then a catalyst for getting bigger or more news exposure and driving up these using PR to generate traffic?
Yeah, so I realized like, hey, it is like a, you get the spike and then it goes away, right? And so, I decide, hey, I'm going to start doing some more PR, but it was always the same thing. It's like you get the exposure, people come to the site and then they leave. And then eventually I learned about email marketing and I would capture, email addresses so that I could now create a community and then I could reach out to these people and keep them coming back. But still, I wanted more steady traffic. And PR really didn't provide that for me. So that's really when I started researching search engine optimization. And that's really kind of what started to like catapult our traffic.
Yeah. And let's talk like big picture. So, I mean, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What gets you excited to keep doing what you're doing?
Yeah, it's interesting because it started out with the personal finance side of things, right? But now I just like helping people when it comes to whatever their goals are, right? And so I have multiple websites now. Well Kept Wallet's like the main website. But for me, it's just, how can we create great content that's going to help people make better choices in life so that they can live a better life, right? And so Well Kept Wallet is the main way that I do that. And it's really exciting to be able to say, hey, here's ways that you can save money. Here's ways that you can make money. Here's how you can pay off your debt fast. Because this helps people have a better life. And so that gets me excited.
That's cool. And so, I mean, let's go back to this approach for building visibility and generating revenue through display ads or we'll talk about monetization models in a minute, but you talked about how you realized PR generated these spikes, which were great. But in order to generate that kind of consistent traffic, you started diving more into SEO. So can you talk through your kind of process or mindset when you're building out content to generate traffic through SEO? What does your approach look like?
It's definitely evolved over the years. I think part of it is initially was saying, okay, we want to have these main verticals that we want to be in: make money, save money, pay off debt. And then in those categories, it was saying, hey, well, what pieces of content need to exist for each one of those verticals? And so looking at like, what are the top 10 posts? Well, if it's making money, a lot of people want to make money on the side. A lot of people want to make money from home. A lot of people want to make money from different age groups, whether you're a kid, teenager, college student, adult. So we just kind of wrote all of that content and really kind of tried to be a resource for, hey, here's how you make money. And then on save money, it's like, okay, well, here's ways you can trim your electricity bill. Here's ways that you can save on your car insurance, whatever it might be. So build out that save money, and then the pay off debt, the same thing. So really just kind of saying, hey, what needs to be in those categories that people are searching for? And we use tools, obviously, that will tell us, are people searching for this or not? Like the Google Ads Planner, which is free, which will give us an estimated search volume, or Ahrefs or SEMrush. Like this is all sorts of tools, but just basically want to see, are people searching for these things? Do they fit in kind of our mission and our verticals that we're trying to rank in? And then we write that content.
And so you write the content and publish it. Obviously, people find it through Google, but then how are you building your audience and your community? I think I looked at your Facebook page. You've got like 66,000 followers or likes. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, there's a huge bunch of people that are following you. Talk me through that process of how you help someone transition from a one-time visitor to a part of your community or a repeat visitor.
So that's totally changed over the years too. But currently what we're doing is we have a sequence that's called the $1,000 Savings Challenge. And we have it on exit intent. So people come to the website, they read some content, and then they're about to click the X button. That's when they'll see a pop-up, I think only on desktop. I don't even know if we have it on mobile, which is kind of interesting. Now I say it out loud, I'm like, wow, most of our people are from mobile. Anyways, I'll look into that. But we have a Facebook group that we send people to that's for the $1,000 Savings Challenge to encourage them to like, hey, save your first $1,000. If maybe it's for some people it's a larger goal, right? They're trying to do their emergency fund and they're trying to fund that. But it's basically we're trying to create this community of people that are saving money, common goal to better their financial lives. And so that's kind of the system that we use now. We used to go to the Facebook page, but now we found that groups are just much better to engage with people.
And so, okay, so they're in the group or they're in the page. what happens then? How does that help you generate revenue, or how does that help you build the community?
Yeah. So the revenue part is to be determined. No. So I think really it's more of engaging people where they're at. And so in the groups, we'll give them encouragement of, like, hey, how much have you saved this week? Here's a challenge that you can do. Look through your monthly expenses and see what bill you can cut this week. See, do you have a gift card laying around? Use that gift card instead of paying cash for dinner tonight, whatever it might be. And then we have articles that we share in the group as well. And those articles obviously will have some monetization intent, either display ads or affiliate ads. Really, that's kind of the model that we're using on the social side. I will say that's a small segment of what we do, but that's kind of what we're doing today.
So in terms of monetization, your main methods are affiliate links and display ads. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, we used to have sponsored content, but we stopped that, I think, about a year or two ago.
And talk about those two monetization models. What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? You just said you dropped another monetization model. What's kind of driving that decision to monetize in that way? And how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, in the ideal world, affiliates is the best way to go, because it's like, hey, here are brands that I believe in, that if we can create a funnel to those brands, it's a win-win-win situation. The consumer wins because they're getting a good service or a product that's going to help them achieve their goal. The product wins because they get a customer, and we win because we get paid, right? And so it's this perfect situation in my mind. The display ads are kind of like, you do it because there's no other way to monetize certain posts, right? And you have less control over that. There's more, it's not as good of a user experience. But there's ways that we've gone, we've minimized the amount of ads that show. We don't have a leaderboard. Like, we do all sorts of stuff to kind of make the ad experience not overwhelming and still a good user experience. So really for me, it was like, hey, how can we shift more to the affiliate side, focus less on display ads? And the sponsored content, I just don't like the brands basically want to control what you say and how you say it and where it's placed and how much exposure. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. Like, I'm here for the readers, not for the brands. And so that's why sponsored content just didn't really jive with me. Yeah.
And have you tried monetizing the community directly in any way, or digital products, tried selling those to them?
I have, and I've had some mixed results with that. I have a course that I created called Debt Free in 18 Months, really just kind of outlining, like, here's how we paid off our debt in 18 months, and teaching people to create SMART goals. And they don't have to say 18 months for them. It could be 24, it could be 6, whatever. So I did that, and I've had some success with that. I had a tripwire that was like how to save $250 a month, which is like $3,000 a year. So it's like, for $7, here's how to save $3,000 a year. That did pretty well. But at the end of the day, there becomes now customer service, of issues being able to log in or not satisfied, or actually no one's never been not satisfied. Everybody's always satisfied, but no, I'm just kidding. So it's one of those things where it creates a lot more dynamics, where I like a simple business. I like a business that's very straightforward, not complex. And so when I had those pieces in the equation, it seemed like the reward was a lot less than the risk. And so, I decided to kind of shift gears.
Yeah. And let's talk about keeping things simple then. And let's talk about, the nuts and bolts of how you make all this happen. I went to your About page. It looks like you have lots of people listed on the About page who are involved in making all this happen. So tell me about how you've built your team, how you structure it, and how that's changed as you're creating content, publishing content, engaging with your community. What's the team you started with, and how's that evolved?
Yeah, so the first thing I did was hire a staff writer. Like, when I was first trying to say, hey, what do I need? Like, I'm actually not the best writer. I admit that. And so I said, let me find somebody that has a similar, value system to me, and hire them to write content. So I hired this lady, Lori, and she's written for me for about 8 years now. So she's been with me the longest. So I started off with like a flat fee of like, I'll pay you this much for an article. And now we do, by word is kind of how we do it, as far as we pay, I don't know, 10 to 20 cents a word, depending on how much experience they have. But then I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to hire a second writer. Well, then I had a second writer. I'm like, well, I don't want to manage the writers. So I need to hire someone to manage the writers. And so I found someone that was kind of like a virtual assistant, but she kind of grew into a bigger role of, managing writer, editor, graphic design, all this stuff. So today that's kind of where we're at. I've transitioned from that person that was managing the blog to a lady, Julie, who's amazing, who basically oversees everything. But yeah, we just use Asana to kind of assign tasks, and we say, okay, here's this article, it's due this date. Here's the drafts due, the graphics due, the published post, all the different things that have to happen, all just get tracked in there, and everybody gets assigned a day and all that good stuff. And so that's kind of how the process goes.
And so in terms of that, I mean, you talked before about you've got these kind of like main content pillars that you're building content around, making money, saving money, getting out of debt. Who's the one who's kind of architecting the kind of the backlog of posts that need to be written, and how are you deciding how to prioritize what to write about?
Yeah, it's more of an art than a science, I think. So I personally have gotten the article ideas and topics. I have like a backlog of 400. Like, I think we could have posts for the next 2 years. But then it's more of like, since Google is what sends most of our traffic, we have to be cognizant of what does Google view our site as. And so certain things that I would like to rank for, I can't rank for. Just because it's not relevant in the eyes of Google. And so I have stuff that's like maybe a wish list of like, hey, maybe someday we could write these, but we're not going to put the resources behind it because it's just not going to pay off. So really, it's more of like Google views us kind of as a consumer site right now, which means more of like, where can you get the best deals on tires, and where can you get free stuff online, like just more less money topics and more consumer advice, or consumer help. So we just kind of cater a lot of the stuff that we do around that. We also are just kind of keeping a pulse on like, what does our audience need, so even if we don't rank for it, we might write it just to say, hey, this is something we can share with our email list, something we can share on social media, that kind of thing.
And so when you're creating content, do you have a handle on how much it costs you to produce and publish a piece of content? You talked about you're paying your writers 10 to 20 cents per word, which actually sounds quite a lot based on the conversations that we've been having with people. I mean, I think you get what you pay for, but overall, I mean, there's a big process, right? There's the ideation, there's that backlog you're talking about, and then we're going through this process of getting that out to writers, getting the drafts back, editing it, getting revisions, getting the graphics, getting it published, promoting it. Do you know how much it costs you to produce a piece of content end to end?
Yeah. So when we used to do sponsored content, I had to calculate that, because I'm like, these brands would ask us to publish it and they say, we'll pay you $500. And I'd say, it costs me more than $500 to produce this article. Like, so it's not worth my time, And so, because if you said, okay, at 20 cents a word for a 2,000 word article, that's $400. We still have to pay an editor. We still have to pay a graphic designer. We still have to pay an SEO person. We still have to pay the manager. Like, you still have all the hosting costs. And so it's like, at the end of the day, it's probably $500 to $1,000 for a piece of content for us. To your point, it is high. And the reason why it's high is because we're in the YMYL category, your money or your life. And so Google, they don't want us to hire people overseas to write these articles about people in the United States who have money problems. They want people that are experts in their field to write about these different things. So like, we have a licensed realtor who writes about real estate. We have someone that has investing experience writing about investing. And so that costs more, unfortunately, on the business side, but it's worth it because it's paid off. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of why we pay that extra fee and why it costs more to produce content for us.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And then, so you've kind of calculated, hey, a post will cost between $500 to $1,000 to produce. When you decide whether or not that piece of content is worth creating, how do you calculate the ROI on your content? And do you do that from a very broad, okay, this year we spent about this much and we made that much? Or are you calculating ROI down to a content a post level?
Yeah, I like, once again, I like to keep it simple, Ben. So for me, I basically use what our RPMs are for our ad network. So let's just say that they're, for easy numbers, $10 per 1,000 visitors, right? I can calculate about how many visitors I'm going to get. So let's just say that I know this post is probably going to get 10,000 visitors a month. So if I was to say, well, 10 times 10 is 100, so $100 a month. Over the next 6 months, I'm going to make $600. So that will pay for the article, right? So I kind of have a break-even date of 6 months is kind of what I'm looking for, is if I'm going to write this article, will I make my money back within 6 months? Sometimes if I really like the article, I'll be like, okay, 12 months, 18 months, whatever, because we'll get paid down the road. But that's usually how I calculate it.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about RPMs. You threw out 10 there as an easy number to do some calculations off the back of. But how have you seen your RPM change over the years? And how has video ads impacted that?
So I don't run any video ads at all, actually. And so I know my ad network's like, why aren't you running these? So I mean, user experience is huge for me. So I look at a website, and if all of a sudden it's like I got an email pop up here, a video ad here, I can't even read the content, right? And so for me personally, that was just a decision. I don't want to do that. But I will say switching from an Adsense to a Mediavine has been huge. So it's like an ad network that we get, I think, 90% of the ad revenue. I'd have to double check, but it's a significant portion of the ad revenue. And I want to say we're probably in that 15 to 20 range RPM. And so I use 10 because I own multiple sites, and some get a lot lower than others. And so, personal finance dictates higher RPMs because you have financial products, where I have a couponing site, and that gets lower RPMs because coupons don't really make money. So it's a lot less margin there. So they'll have a lower RPM.
Cool. Thanks for that. That's helpful. I mean, I want to move on from talking about what you're doing now to talk about where you're going and where you see this going. We've talked about Well Kept Wallet. You've talked about how you've got some other sites that you've launched as well. And you wrote a book as well, actually, called You Can Retire Early. Tell us about how that book came about and how you see that kind of process evolving.
Yeah. So, I had a buddy that actually was kind of scraps. So he didn't want to write the book. So he's like, hey, Deacon, if you want to contact these people. But no, so he was a published author, and he's like, I've already been there, done that, not interested. But this particular publisher wanted to have this book written. And I just thought, well, hey, I really want to give people a perspective of retirement that I think is a little bit different, because I don't ever actually want to retire early per se. But the book is more about financial independence. So how do you create the financial independence to do what you want when you want? And then you could work 5 hours a week. You could go work for a nonprofit. You could go, you could not work if you don't want to, but most people want to do something productive, right? And so that's kind of the angle that I take in the book. Is more, we talk about business, investing in the stock market and real estate as ways to retire early or to create financial independence. And so I was really excited about that opportunity to be able to say, hey, here's some real practical ways that if you want to have financial security for yourself earlier in life than most people, here's the roadmap for it. And so that was kind of how that all came about.
And for you, I mean, let's dig into that for a second. But financial independence, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things. You mentioned a few things high level there. But for you, in terms of the most impactful things that people can do in order to gain that financial independence, based on your research and what you've done, what are the few things that actually drive the most value in terms of financial independence? Because there's the scrimping and saving and not spending money. I guess that's one end. That's for me, that's the negative end. But then there's creating wealth, which is, I guess, on the other end of the spectrum. Now, they obviously can be done in conjunction with one another. But for you, what has been the most impactful way that you've gained financial independence?
Yeah, so that's the making money side of the equation, right? And I think that's where a lot of people in the FIRE movement, which is the financial independence, retire early, where there's a huge emphasis on savings. But to your point, it's kind of the scarcity mindset. I only have limited resources and I'm going to save as much as I can, versus saying, no, I want to have this like more abundance mindset. That's not from a new age perspective, but more of like, hey, there's endless opportunity out there, right? Like I can figure out ways to make money.
Yeah.
And so like when we were paying off our debt, I decided that I was going to go to yard sales and I would buy stuff that I knew and I would flip it on Amazon and eBay, right? So I'd buy a router for $5 and I'd sell it for $40, right? Like I found an opportunity for value. Or I would, I deliver pizzas at night. Like I figured out ways to just create new revenue sources so that I'm bringing in multiple streams of income and not tied to just one W-2 place, right? Because at the time I was working for somebody else. But so that was kind of the aha moment of, well, if I do this over here, if I sell that router, it took me 20 minutes of work and I made $35. Or if I deliver a pizza an hour, I made $15. It was like, I'd much rather flip stuff than deliver pizza, right? So you start to have this equation in your head of like, oh, where could I spend my time most effectively to get the maximum reward, And so for me, I think that's where a lot of people, if they want to pursue financial independence, it's going to be outside of their traditional W-2. It's going to be, hey, how can you add value? How can you go out there? I know a lot of people that go on and do like virtual assistant work, or they'll do websites. That was one of the things that I did actually. So when I quit being a financial planner and I had Well Kept Wallet, I was like, hey, I don't make enough money to like kind of offset my previous income. So I decided I'm going to build websites. And I went to a buddy and they had this horrendous Flash website. And I'm like, I could build you a new website. He said, for how much? And I'm like, I'm researching, Googling like how much to charge for a website. I was like, $1,200. He's like, done. I'm like, really? And then I figured out how to build a website, right? And now my time per hour, or my value per hour, went up to like $200 an hour or whatever it was to create that website, because it didn't take long. Obviously, there's a lot of research and figuring it out. But so yeah, that make money side of the equation is huge as far as people that want to achieve financial independence quickly.
Yeah, and I think the hustling as well. I mean, this is very like Gary V. I love his videos where he's going out buying stuff, flipping it. But I think the different thing that you're talking about as well is developing skills to do that. So, the skill, the ability to build a website and publish content actually creates a whole load of opportunity to create wealth. And it's really not that complicated. So if you haven't got on the bandwagon of building your first website, get on it, guys. It's so worth it. But going back to that original question, which is, so you started Well Kept Wallet, you've created some other sites as well. Where do you see this going? Where are you trying to get to, and why?
Yeah, so I'm still kind of figuring that out, Ben. But I would say what I get excited about is growing different properties, right? And so the old school model, I think, of kind of creating a successful business was, kind of like buying real estate and getting tenants and so like what I view websites as is kind of like online real estate, right? Of, hey, we can have multiple different types of properties, one in personal finance, one in mental health, one in home electronics, and grow these up and use these systems and processes that I've created to be able to help those verticals grow and be successful and serve people in each one of those, And so for me, I get excited about saying, hey, like, how can I do this on a bigger scale, help more people, and use kind of these proven methods that, we've seen to be successful.
Yeah. And as you're doing that, you've obviously been doing this now for a while. What are the things that you find tough, or what are some of the challenges that you're dealing with right now as you're doing that?
Well, so I will say I'm not perfect, right? So I've learned I bought websites and I'm like, oh, I'm going to grow these things, and they fail, and so I've learned that like it does take a lot of trial and error. It's not it's not as easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right? So it's a matter of like, okay, well, I gotta have a criteria for buying websites. Before I didn't, I was like, oh, it just has a good authority and it's been around for a while. Well, that's not enough, So really, just kind of saying, okay, I gotta have a criteria, and then once I have that criteria, it's got to make sure it checks all these boxes, and then we'll value it at this, and then we acquire it, and then we put these systems in place, and so really just kind of saying like, we're still kind of figuring that out. What works in one niche doesn't necessarily work in another niche. And so, there are things that are universal, but some things are a little bit more difficult. So just kind of learning as I go.
And so on your roadmap of building these sites out, are there any particular milestones that for you are, things that you're really trying to hit for whatever reason?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I've always had this idea in my head that 10 sites doing $1 million a year, right? So $10 million a year in revenue. That was kind of like an exciting revenue goal, or, I'm less money. I guess I'm less money motivated now. I'm more like people motivated, right? So how many more people can we reach, And so, if we could get 10 sites that are doing, 1 million visitors a month, that'd be fantastic. Well-Kept Wallet has been there. We've had ups and downs from Google algorithms. But that's the goal, is like, hey, how can we get more of these sites, reach more people, have a solid message, have a really good content team, and just go out there and just serve people well, right? And so that's what gets me excited.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think it's great to have a goal beyond just financial goals. And I think thinking about, actually, what does this mean to create content that is good, that blesses people? Actually, that's a really worthy milestone. That's a really worthy goal beyond making lots of money. Like if we want to have a positive impact in the world, thinking about how we can use the skills that we have to do that, I think is great. So yeah, good on you for that. I want to close by just doing a lightning round, just ask you some quick questions. So what is the best advice do you think you've ever received?
The best advice that I've ever received? I think diversification, right? I think what I've found is I've gone all in on one thing, and that one thing failed, right? And then just realizing like there is value in having multiple income streams and not just one, right? And so there's a lot of trial and error that came with that, of like, okay, this didn't work out so well, but there were some positive aspects of it. Let me tweak it and do this. So really just kind of diversifying my efforts, being willing to fail and try new things.
And which of your personal habits do you think has contributed most to your success?
Oh man, my habits are, I'm not the 5-hour wake up in the morning kind of guy, right? So I would say I love to learn. I think that's so, like just reading audiobooks, watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts. So I think that desire to learn and grow, I think that's the most important habit that I have, right? Because I'm constantly, I love that quote from Abraham Lincoln. It's like, I want to be better than the guy I was yesterday, right? Like it's so this idea of like, I want to grow and learn from my mistakes. I totally butchered that quote, but it's something like that. And so the idea of just like continuing to grow and to continue to learn, I think that habit has served me well.
So on that learning journey, that development journey, is there a resource or tool that you recommend particularly that you use regularly?
So I would say, well, I mean, not necessarily a tool, but there's a book that I like called The One Thing by Gary Keller. And I think that was crucial for me, because I think as entrepreneurs, we can get stuck on like, we have so many things to get done. And he has this principle that's, what one thing, if you do it, everything else becomes easy or unnecessary. And that has totally transformed my life. It's given me time freedom. It's given me more financial resources, because I focused on the things that really matter, the one thing that matters, versus a million things that don't matter, right? So that's been super helpful.
Yeah, I love that book. It's a good one. So for someone at the beginning of their digital media journey, what is one piece of advice that you'd give them as maybe they're trying to start up their content site, they're trying to start a blog, they're trying to start a community? What's one bit of advice that you'd give them that has served you well?
Yeah, I would say having that strong why. Like, why are you going to do it? Because I think that the reality is it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. But if you have a why that drives you, right? Like it could be you want to create an automotive blog. You're like, I really love cars. And I was frustrated because I never had anybody to teach me how to repair a car. So I'm going to do DIY videos on how to fix a car. And that why drives you, even though you're not going to make money for 6 months to a year, right? And so that strong why, I think, is huge.
Awesome. Where can people find out more? We've talked about wellkeptwallet.com. Is there anywhere else people should go or to find out more about you?
No, that's the best place, wellkeptwallet.com. And then on Twitter, @Deacon Hayes is the tag, I guess you would call it.
Your handle.
Twitter handle. That's it.
Yeah. Well, Deacon, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great having you with us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Ben.
And if you like what you heard today, please subscribe, stay in touch on indiemedia.club, and also leave us a review too if you like what you heard today. But until next time, thank you so much for listening.